E kau ki te taie, e kau rā e tāne, e au wiki ana e tala tū mana. Anō reira, nau mai anō e roto i tēnei kaupapa, ara ko ngā pūkōrero e roto i Te Koronga, ko ai ahau e tuaki, ko Emery tōku ingoa, ko Maua, ko Chanel, ngā kaihautu o tēnei kaupapa o Te Koronga, no Ngāpuhi nui tōnu Māua, ki oi no Ngāti Hini hoki ia, e no Ngāti Kahu o Whangaroa, me Ngāti Whātua Te Roro me Ngāti Wai hoki ahau. Anō reira nau mai anō whakatau mai. Good afternoon. Yes, everybody, and welcome to our pūkōrero, our seminar series within Te Koronga, our Indigenous Science Research theme. For those who I haven't met, I'm Anne-Marie Jackson. I'm based in the School of Physical Education, Sport and Exercise Sciences, which is the Ahuru Mowai, or the Safe Harbour for our kaupapa of Te Koronga, our Indigenous Science Research theme. And our kaupapa has two components. One is graduate research excellence, becoming a Māori academic, both those who are Māori and have interests in Māori academia, as well as those who are non-Māori who want to work in this notion of Māori research excellence. And the second component is the theme, which is here around understanding three components. Firstly, understandings of Māori derived knowledge, interface work, and then those areas of research which are primarily from a Western perspective, but Māori have an interest in. So a warm welcome, and it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Co-Director of Te Koronga, Dr Chanel Phillips, who is, as I said, from Ngāpuhi and Ngāti Hini, up in Te Tokiro, and her presentation today is entitled E Kau Ki Te Taie, which comes from a chant from Nukutawhiti, one of the great navigators of one of our canoes of the north, which she'll talk about today. E Kau Ki Te Taie, aligning Māori and teaching research excellence. Chanel's just started as a permanent academic staff member, so give her a big round of applause. Which is wonderful. We think it's the second Māori academic staff appointment in a Māori entitled role within the Division of Sciences, two in the history of sciences. So it's a hugely wonderful time. Of course, there were a number of challenges in putting the position together for Chanel, and so she will be speaking today for a short time in relation to her paper that she's teaching, brand new paper, SPEX 306, Te Pou o Te Koronga, so the backbone of Te Koronga in understanding Māori physical education and health, with a particular bent on the importance of the environment for health and well-being, or the core underlying kaupapa of much of what we do around Māori order. Ki oi anō, ho mai anō te piki paki.
Nea te mihi ki a koe, i tēnā rei kora, i te kaihautu o tō tātou nei waka Te Koronga, Emery, mō tō mihi a tāhua, kia au Aotearoa. Nea te mihi ki a koutou anō ki. Ko waio, ko mō te tau te maunga, ko Taikiro te awa, ko Ngātokimatawhaorua te waka, ko Ngāpuhi te iwi, ko Ngāti Hini te hapu, no te nō tāhau, ko Chanel Phillips tōku ingoa, no reira tēnā tātou katoa. So as Anne-Marie said, my kōrero today is around this notion of Māori research and teaching, and my very brand new role into that as well. And when we were talking about this pūkōrero coming up, and I was, for me, I felt unfortunately put on this one because we had others who weren't able to speak, so you're stuck with me today, aloha mai. And we were talking about what I could potentially talk about. It seemed that I've been doing my PhD presentation kind of over and over again, kind of every angle I could possibly think of. And so I got to this point where I had no idea what I was going to say for this pūkōrero, and having a coffee with Emery up in the staff club, and she talked about, well, you're a brand new staff member, brand new lecturer at PE school, talk about how you designed your new paper, and specifically how you designed your paper from your PhD. So that's what you've got today. And my kaupapa is around this, this is the English translation here, around this karakia or incantation, E Kau Ki Te Taie, which I'll share with you now, and you can follow through with the English there. E Kau Ki Te Taie, E Kau Ki Te Taie, E Kau Rā E Kāri. Wāhi atura te ngaru hokohoko marerei au, pikiti atu te aurere kura o Tāotaorangi. Tapatapa rūru ana te kakau o te hoi e auhiki ana e taratūtu ana te hoka o Tangaroa. I te puhi whatu kura I te puhi mai rei kura o tapu waka. Ka titiro iho au ki te pai o runga ki te pai o waho. Peki turangi ana te kakau o te koe I kumea te uru o tapu waka ki runga I te kiri waiwai o papatua nuku e tako tō mai nei. Ki runga ki te uru tapu nui o tāne e tū mai nei. Whati rua te hoi a kaupoto. Tauake ki te hoi nāpura. He ara ki whatu manua, tō manua, e kura ki whatu manua. Ka erihia ki waio nuku, ka erihia ki waio rangi. Ka whiti au ki te whai au ki te ao marama. Tupu kere, tupu wana. Ka hara mai te toke a haumi e hui e tā kine. So for me, this karakia has deep personal connection, both to where I whakapapa to, as well as kind of my research journey and coming into this new space of teaching this year as well. So this karakia, which was recited either by Nukutawhiti or Nukutawhiti's tohunga, depending on whose account you follow. And Nukutawhiti was the captain of my ancestral canoe from the north, Ngātokimatawhaorua. Nukutawhiti was the grandson, or great-grandnephew, again, depending on whose kōrero you follow, of Kupe, the great navigator, Māori navigator. And so for me, this image here is the waka at the bottom, Ngātokimatawhaorua, that sits at the treaty grounds, the Treaty of Waitangi, in Waitangi in the Bay of Islands. And for me, looking at the importance of this karakia, it actually started in my masters in 2014, 2015. And my personal connection, when I was writing my master's thesis, which was looking at the role of mahi ngakai, so our traditional food gathering practices and places, looking at the importance of mahi ngakai for our health and well-being. And when I was writing my thesis, I kind of used this karakia, e kau ki te taie. I wanted to analyse it, I wanted to use it to help frame my thinking, but I wasn't quite there yet. I knew that I loved karakia, I knew that I had a deep connection to this karakia, but I didn't have the skill sets to analyse it, to understand it fully. And I hadn't actually been home to Hokianga, which is where this karakia is from. So I kind of left it on the side, just knowing that it was important for me. And I was really lucky because when I went to hand in my master's thesis, which was actually a beautiful kind of ceremony. A lot of people talk about how anticlimactic it is handing in a thesis. In Te Koronga, it's the complete opposite. It's like this massive ceremony ritual where your whānau gets surprised by bringing whānau down and having karakia, and it's just awesome. But I was really lucky that when I went to submit my master's thesis, we were having a kaupapa happening at the university with Toi Tangata. So they're our national Māori physical activity and health rōpū, and they had a university day on the same day that I was handing in my thesis. And so I didn't know they were coming to uni, and I certainly didn't know they were coming to my hand-in. And so when I went to go hand-in, Anne-Marie brought me up and introduced me to a whole bunch of strangers that I hadn't met and had this awesome time in Karatani that I unfortunately missed out on because I had to finish my master's. And there were two kaumātua from Ngātihini, from home, where I'm from, and they ended up they helped me hand over my thesis that day. And the karakia that the kaumātua tūkaki used was e kau ki te taie. And for me, that was kind of coming full circle, I thought, at that time. Here, out of all the way down the bottom of the South Island, you've got our two kaumātua from all the way from the top of the North Island coming down to essentially hand over my thesis with me. So that was, again, a personal connection I had to this karakia. I was gifted these two rocks, not the ones in the image. These are Hawati's pukatai and rerutai, and those are our symbols or metaphors for knowledge. In our traditional whare wānanga, you would swallow a small stone, and that represented your commitment to learn, your commitment to be grounded in who you are, where you come from, and the commitment to want to I guess, achieve that higher esoteric knowledge. And they represent the sea foam and the sea spray. And so one is red and one is white. And these two kaumātua from Ngātihini gifted me a huputai and a rehutai stone from home when I handed in my master's thesis. So all of these kind of connections helped me to realise how important karakia was for us as Māori, and particularly this karakia in shaping my research journey and then later shaping my teaching that just started this semester. So this karakia was recited from Nukutawhiti, and the story goes that when they were travelling from Hawaii to Aotearoa to Hokianga, they had to reach or pass the Hokianga sandbar. And this was a really treacherous sandbar. And what happened was, as they were coming in, they realised that they were going to capsize. And so Nukutawhiti recited this karakia to calm the waves and to make it safe for the waka to safely come to the shores of Hokianga. And so that's what the karakia in its essence is about. It teaches us many lessons. There are many messages embedded within as well. And I used this karakia in my PhD research, looking at Māori water safety and drowning prevention. And so one of my, loves as well is looking at our traditional oral narratives and reinterpreting the messages embedded within those texts for solutions or issues today. How can we reinterpret that knowledge to fit today's context? So that was just some personal connection to this karakia. One of the other insights to this karakia is so my waka Ngātokimatawhaorua was originally matahurua or matawhaorua, and that was Kupe's waka. Kupe's waka that brought the first Māori to Aotearoa. When Kupe and matawhaorua, the waka, returned back to Hawaii, his grandson Nukutawhiti at the time, there was a lot of war going on, a lot of unease, particularly between the younger and the older generation. So Nukutawhiti asked his grandfather, can I take the waka back to the lands that you just came from, and can I take a new generation to start our new life? And Kupe said yes. And I guess the next part of this karakia, or this kōrero actually, was that they then had to reshape the waka for a new purpose. So they reshaped this waka with toki or ads. There were 4 other stories, there were 2 ads, but essentially they were toki. And this is where our name Ngātokimatawhaorua came from, because the waka was reshaped and repurposed for the new generation coming through. And so this actually, how can I design a paper? How can I design a course where I'm actually thinking about this new generation coming through and our future scholars? And like Nukutawhiti did in terms of setting out to Aotearoa to start a new life, he wouldn't have had much of an idea of what that might look like. But thinking about what are the tools, or those toki, that we can use to help shape the future generation. And so that's what I took from this karakia, is how can I now, as an educator, reshape and repurpose my waka to support future generations coming through. Another insight from this karakia was something else that Nukutawhiti did, was recruiting tohunga, or our spiritual experts. And those spiritual experts were the ones that placed karakia, they were the ones that recited karakia, so that the waka could be reshaped and re-adsed correctly, but then also so that it had its protection around it as well. Building waka, it's a very sacred, it's a very tapu kaupapa, I guess, or job. There's a lot of ritual attached to it, a lot of sacredness. And so karakia was one way to ensure the safety and to ensure the safety of all those involved in this process. So for me, thinking about recruiting my tohunga, both in my research as well as in my teaching, and these were just some of the many of my tohunga or my mentors. And so I've got Whaia Kaila up the top there, Kaipahu woman, Brendan Flack from down here in Puketeraki as well, out in Ngāti Huirapa, and Papa Mike Paki from Ngāti Upper Ngā Wairiki up Ni Wanganui, or the Rangitike region. And for me, recruiting these mentors, essentially, it was being privileged to be able to sit with our kaumātua and with our kuia, to learn from them and their many experiences, their many stories. And then also, how can I take the knowledge that they've passed on to me and pass it on to others as well? And so like Nukutawhiti and recruiting tukunga for the purpose of this new waka, I did the same with my research. Not only did I have my supervisors, but I was actually thinking about, I guess it's almost like creating an ahuru mowai or a safe haven, a shelter while you're writing the PhD, because it can be quite awful sometimes. And you just need the ones there that will kind of pati you and manaki you or uplift you. So Whaia Kaila, I sat with her for about 3.5 hours one day during our writing retreat that we had out in Karatani. It was towards the end of my PhD. Everything was written, but it wasn't written well. It wasn't didn't have a nice flow, it didn't have a concise thesis, essentially, which is kind of the main point of your PhD. So about 2 weeks out from Handon, I was getting a bit nervous. But like my supervisor would always say, trust in the process. And so by that point, I was really trusting that somehow we were going to be together. And two weekends before Handon, I sat down with Whaia Kaila, and she gave me this beautiful kōrero about runa and the moon. Whaia Kaila is a gardener, marapai, and she lives and breathes everything the moon and related to the moon, and how it helps with her gardening, with her mara. And so she talked about what runa meant to her, how she followed the moon phases. And while she was encouraging me to potentially use the maramataka, or the Māori lunar calendar, to help shape my thesis, I knew for me I couldn't quite see the links. Because I didn't live by the moon at that point. I wasn't a gardener, and I couldn't see the connection that she was talking about. But what I took from what Whaia Kaila told me was to find what runa was for me. What was my runa? What was the way that I kind of saw everything, saw the world? And so for me, my runa became the tuna, or the longfin eel. For us, home in Ngātihine, the tuna is our kaitiaki, our guardian. It's a taonga, it's a treasure, and it's something very, important or sacred to Ngātihine from the north. And so that's what I did. I ended up shaping my entire thesis around the life cycle and the journey that the tuna does from the mountains to the sea and back again. And Papa Mike Paki in the middle there, so he was kind of like what I call him my modern day prophet. There's a really great book called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. I don't actually know how to pronounce his name properly, but it's a beautiful book, and it was sort of my first introduction into philosophy, and that was a whole nother rabbit hole that you could go down, and I kind of just started touching the surface with that. But what Papa Mike Paki did was he ensured that I was constantly challenging my thinking, asking myself, does this thinking come from Ngātihine? Does this thinking come from my other communities? Or does this thinking come from something entirely outside of Māori worldview? And then he said, which are the voices that you want to be heard the most? Because those are the voices that you need to come from. And so Mike Paki was my greatest challenger. He always challenged me to think about what I was reading, to think about what I was saying as well, and making sure that the story came from me, and making sure that my voice was seen throughout the pages of my PhD. And Brendan Flack, again, another awesome expert and I guess protector for us students. When we go out to Karatani, to Puhi Marae, we have a really close relationship with the whānau out there because of Anne-Marie and her relationship that she started with them a little while ago. And so for us, Brendan became a second home. Karatani became a second home for many of us students based here at Otago. And Brendan's love for the ocean, for Tangaroa, for just being keen and getting out there, that's what really resonated with me. And he loved the ocean as well, not only for surfing, but because of mahinga kai, because these places provided sustenance and nourishment for his people, for his whānau. And that's something that I took from working alongside Brendan. So really this karakia was about teaching us insights around how, like Nukutawhiti, we might recruit our mentors to support us in the work today. These were the same people that I then went to once I finished my PhD and came into thinking about designing this new course or my new paper as well. Similar to recruiting Tukunga, it was looking at that relationship between Nukutawhiti and Kupe, the grandson and the grandfather, or thinking about those two generations, and looking at it as the master carver teaching the student. And so for me, I had incredible master carvers, two of them up there, Dr. Emery Jackson and Dr. Hawati Hakopa, and they were essentially the navigators for our waka, Te Koronga. And they were the ones that paved the way for myself and many others coming through on this journey through, I guess, academic excellence, or through this journey to knowing who we are and where we come from as well. And so what I took from this karakia was, like Kupe was to Nukutawhiti, it was the understanding that Kupe trusted his grandson he trusted him to reshape this waka for a new purpose. And so this is something that I'm always truly grateful to for Emery and Hawati, because that's what they did for me. They helped shape and guide me through my research journey, and then they trusted me to take this new waka or this new SPEX 06 paper and make it my own. And that I'll always be truly grateful for. But that's one of the lessons I took from this karakia, is the importance of the master carver teaching the student, and then hopefully the lessons I took from Emery and Hawati are the lessons that I'll be passing on to my students as well. So coming into my paper, SPEX 306 Te Koronga, so it's an advanced Māori physical education and health paper. These are the 5 key topics, or wāhanga, of the course. So looking at tangata, people, whenua, land, waka, canoes, moana, ocean, and wai, water. And really it's about Māori relationship to the environment and its impact and relevance for our health and well-being, or this idea of flourishing wellness. And those 5 topics were kind of preset when I came into teaching this paper. So I knew that as long as it had those 5 components, it was going to be fine, whatever I designed. Well, that's what Emery told me anyway, so I went away with it. And this is how I went about designing my course. So with those 5 topics, I thought about the 3 key outcomes, or the 3 key objectives, I suppose, from my PhD. So the first thing that I learned from writing my PhD was this idea of ko wai no wai. Who am I and where do I come from? This notion of a journey to belonging, a journey knowing who you are and where you come from. And for me, that was the best and biggest lesson. My greatest lesson for my PhD was knowing more about who I am and where I come from. From Ngātokimatawhaorua, we have this kōrero. When we talk about a journey to belonging, we're specifically talking about the tuna and the life cycle of the tuna. Because as this image shows, you've got the phase 1 here, or the eggs, or the iwi tuna, and that's out at sea. Then they come into larvae, then into this glass eel, or this translucent, transparent phase, and that's when they're starting to go between the ocean through the estuaries, or the estuarine waters. And then you're moving into the tangariki, or the algas, the baby tuna, and that's when you're starting to come into fresh water. And then moving into the adult phase, or the tuna, and that's when they can go back from the rivers out to the ocean to spawn, and then the eggs, and start the journey again. So that cycle we call a journey to belonging in Ngātokimatawhaorua, because the same way that we think about us as humans trying to find our connection and relationship to place, it's the same way that the tuna do, as the eggs float for 2 years somewhere out by, they don't even know really where, following, I guess it's that instinctive way of knowing where they come from. And those tuna find their way back to Aotearoa, and then they go back out to sea again. The second was looking at Māori oral narratives. So in my PhD, I examined oral texts, so our pūrākau, our stories, karakia, whakatauki, pūrākau, our stories, I think I already said that. And for me, I found so much value in going back, looking back at our literature, at our Māori oral narratives. And so that was something I really wanted to make sure that I brought into this new paper. And the third one was kind of the overall kaupapa, is looking at this idea of Māori health in the environment. With healthy people and healthy environments, it's how we will flourish. And so those were the three key ideas that I took from my PhD and directly put them into my SPEX 306 paper. So just in terms of the course design, those 5 key topics I related to the 5 key phases of this tuna journey. So Wahanga 1 represents the phase 1 of the tuna journey, and so that looks at tangata, so lectures around the importance of the human body. And phase 2, the whē tuna, or the whenua phase. And so that's looking at the importance of land for Māori health and well-being. Coming down to the inanga phase, and that's looking at the importance of our waka, of our canoes, and how waka can be used as metaphors and symbols for our health and well-being as well. Phase 4 is around tangariki, or the elvers, and that reflects the wahanga 4, or the wai, water. And so those lectures are really around the importance of wai for Māori health. And then finally into the 5th wahanga, or the tuna, that's when we're starting to go into lectures around the moana and the importance of the ocean and our connection to the ocean. And so that's how I essentially designed my paper. And then the last thing, which is probably something I'm still working with, Anne-Marie says it's a work in progress and you'll do a lot of evaluating and reflecting at the end of the course. This part here is quite hard because I remember struggling with this in my PhD. But these were the main themes that helped me understand Māori connection to the environment and the relevance that connection has to our notions of hauora or health. And so this is something I wanted my students to be able to see as well. And so within this course, I'm encouraging my students to look at these 3 things: whakapapa, or genealogy, mātauranga, our Māori knowledge, bodies of knowledge or ways of knowing, and tikanga, our cultural customs and practices. And so these were the 3 themes that I guess underpinned my Māori water safety model that I did design in my PhD. But within my SPEX 306 paper, I'm encouraging my students to look, when we're analysing our oral texts, to look at these 3 themes and try to understand, can you see whakapapa, can you see mātauranga, and can you see tikanga? And it's starting to get them out of their comfort zones, and it's starting to get them to see, I guess, what's at the heart of Māori culture as well, and that inevitably will be at the heart of Māori relationship to the environment. Yeah, so that's my paper. 306. Nailed it. And if you have any questions, I'm actually going to, in the background, just play another wee presentation, well, if you do have questions. So one of the things that I got my students to do in the second lecture was to develop, or to write a poem, haiku. So Māori Marsden, a Ngāpuhi philosopher, talked about the importance of, what did he say? The route to Māoritanga doesn't lie through, it doesn't work through like abstract approach or something, but the answer is it lies within a subjective approach, inward subjective approach. And one thing he did suggest was that perhaps if someone was outside of the culture, if you had the soul of a poet, you might be able to gain insight, because something about poetry helps to relay Māori thought, essentially. And so I kind of played around with that idea of poetry and got my students to write a haiku on tangata and a haiku on whenua. And then they joined them together and then gave it a title. So these are their haiku, essentially, from the class. And these are the group names as well that are coming up. So one thing that we do, that I learned from Anne-Marie, is with Māori pedagogies, one way that we learn best is by working with others, so working with whānau groups. And so I put my students into whānau groups, there's about 10 groups, and then tried to think of how I could name them. and ended up looking at Māori Marsden's whakapapa of the world, the creation of the world. And these are essentially whakapapa, parts of that genealogy of how the world was created from Te Kore to Te Po to Te Aotearoa. And these are sort of the steps in between as well. Kia ora, so if you've got any questions? Mai.
Well, I muri tēnā, mai atu. And as you can see, one of the many kaupapa within the kaupapa of Te Koronga is around excellence. And what are notions of Māori excellence within the academy? What do they look like? And it's exciting that we can start to see the innovations around teaching excellence within the university and within our department, and also within sciences, and what are these notions of Māori and indeed of Indigenous excellence. So I'd like to open it up for any questions, comments for Chanel. Go.
Thank you, that was really inspiring. How's it been going in terms of, like, are there SPEX students here, or?
So one was here before Royal
right,
to shoot off. I can say how I think it's going.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's going for the students. I love it.
There's about 50 students in there too, in the 3, about 50, in there too, so keep going.
Yeah, I love it. I'm really fortunate as well. Where the lecturer is, the room is based at PE school, in the main seminar room, and across the wall has all of the past deans of PE school, and one of them, Les Williams, was Anne-Marie's mentor. And so it just was quite fitting that my very first paper, a student of Anne-Marie, who was a student of Les, is kind of in that safe space, or that ahu mōwai. And so it was almost, it was just beautiful, kind of from the start, knowing that was where I would be lecturing each week. So it's a 2-hour paper, about 50 students, and I mean, I really enjoy it. I love it. It's fun and it's challenging to, design the course material each week. But it's funny because I'm already thinking about how to make it better for next year. I'm enjoying it.
Well, it's fantastic to hear, because sometimes it's hard being innovative and filling it in with university timetabling expectations, like restricted rooms sometimes the space isn't right.
It's a great room.
It's like lifting knowing that.
And I think even that too, like designing those assessments was quite scary. I didn't quite know what I wanted my students to be able to do, whether it was essay writing, whether it was oral presentations, and we've actually put in it's kind of like a new assessment, but looking at mōtiatia and analysing mōtiatia. And so mōtiatia for us, they're just enriching. There's so much whakapapa, mātauranga and tikanga within our mōtiatia. And so for many of us working in this physical education and health space, when we're trying to find solutions, we tend to look at our oral narratives. And for me, I think mōtiatia has huge connections to haora. And so that's one of the new things we're trying to do with our students is can they go through, can they analyse the mōtiatia, and can they then perform it or articulate it or express it in a way that makes sense to them.
Thank you, that was great, very inspiring. My question's kind of follow on from Anna's, so I guess the 50 students, I don't know much about the PE degree, is it compulsory or no, so it's optional? And
optional 300 level paper.
And how many Pākehā, Te Aotearoa versus Māori students?
Most of the class, I actually haven't looked at, but most of the class non-Māori. The really cool thing is with this paper is it's prerequisite to Anne-Marie's, or Anne-Marie's is a prerequisite into that one. And so they come in with a foundation knowledge around Māori worldview, around Māori physical education and health. And so that's why it's quite cool coming in at this level, because now I get to find ways to challenge them a bit further. And while I know it's quite a high level, because I struggle doing these things in my PhD, it's just trying to find that balance, I guess, But for me, that was one of the greatest things I took from my PhD. So that's one of the key things I would encourage my students.
And the poetry writing, they weren't resistant to that?
They actually, it was funny, you could see it in their faces, they were totally resistant. they did not want to do it at all. And it's kind of, it's just, you just make them. And so you can't shy away when you're in a whānau group, and that's usually why working in whānau is so good. If they had to do it individually, it would have been hard. But because they got to do it in a whānau group, everyone was so uncomfortable, so everyone didn't want to do it together. And then together they did it, and it was fantastic. And when they just wrote them out, or they usually just typed them out, and then I got them to email it through to me. And then I put them in this format with an image, and then showed it to them in the class the following week. And we had some students come up afterwards to say thank you for doing that, because it made us realise how cool it actually looked. And so I think sometimes, our students, they might not know, they won't know if it's good or not until they try it, I guess. And that's something that I took from being a student. I remember when we had to do group work with Anne-Marie's class, I hated it. I hated the idea of working in a group. And it was the best thing for me, and learning how to work with others. Learning also your leadership roles as well, and how you work with group dynamics. So that's what I took from it anyway. As a student, you sometimes have to do things you don't want to do, but it turns out great.
Did you mark their poetry?
No.
Okay.
This was just an in-class activity.
And I think a big part for us, I guess, what people take away is understanding your student body too. So for us as physical educators, our students are very dominant in the kinesthetic style of learning. And so as Chanel described, we try and match things pedagogically, so in the setup in the class that suits their learning preferences too. So many of them will come from a physical education or a sporting background, so they're naturally affiliated to working as a group and as a whānau. And many physical education students are very comfortable in leadership roles too, so, and they're very keen too. So normally in class you can say, oh hey, what does someone think about whakapapa? You know, you've got like 5 hands up, or you just got people yelling out the answer too. And because people, so a big part I think what Chanel's really able to extend them is sort of thinking around who are your students in the class, and some of those dominant learning preferences, I think. Ki pātai anō?
Just one more. Do you get out and about and, field trips up to Pūkōrero or as part of the course?
So we do, so we've got a noho marae, and that's in the 3rd week, I think, of September. So that's really going to look at applying what we've done in class around tangata, waka, whenua, wai, moana. It's got that all out there. And so that's probably one of the main, I guess, outdoor things we do. One thing that I probably am already thinking about is, how do we get out of the classroom a bit more often? We've got a trip to the Hocken, and that's a similar thing that we do, or Anne-Marie does in her paper. But that's something I'm quite conscious of. Is there, even if we use like Smithers gym for a bit of physical activity stuff, or out in the gardens. So that's definitely things I'm thinking of. Probably for next year though, to be honest. And at the moment, it's sort of first hour is sort of your standard lecture, and then the second hour is usually an activity like the poetry, or really around looking at our pūrākau, karakia, analysing them.
We're pretty excited to see, because I guess what we've been able to create is a pipeline through. So we have content now on the 100 level that we teach into some of the other papers, and because we have a standalone Māori content, it's exciting. I mean, these slides are up in our postgrad are already amazing, and so it's awesome, as we'll see in a few years once those students from Chanel's come up into honours, postgraduate diplomas, up into masters and into PhD. Just the ability really to stretch even further we're super excited about that too.
With SPEX, is this so it's SPEX, so it's not, Okay, so would other students...
Yeah, sorry.
We've had a big management change too, yeah.
Would students doing other degrees that are related to the environment and things be able to like step into those classes?
Yeah, so I guess the prerequisites for getting into SPEX 306 is through, if you're doing it through PE, you have to have done AMRE SPEX 206. If you're outside of the other of the degree, I think it's just so many like 200 level papers around like from Timu, Māori studies. It's mainly in health, Māori health. Yeah. So it's mainly the foundation is having some sort of foundation in Māori content, because that's the part that we really explain in that paper.
Yeah, so it's the first time in many years that a number of the phys ed school papers have been open. So the papers now sit on all the schedules, most of the schedules. And the degree that these two papers sit in the school, they also sit in the commerce schedule too. So it's great. It means that we can have students who are from outside the traditional degrees and majors now that can come in and minor, and so I think it's bringing some nice diversity into the class too with your sort of the physical education cohort. It's the same in the paper I teach the 200, and then you have other students that come in as well, which I think is just great too.
How many students from other divisions or areas of study are in these papers?
So in your one there might be probably about, I think 5 to 6.
Yeah, wouldn't be that many.
5 to 6. So brand new, very first time it's been taught this year. Yeah, so about 5 to 6. And then in our 200, it's maybe 8 to 10. Yeah, there's 100 in that class. Yeah, all optional. Awesome. Okay, that's us. So let's way up the coming along, we have some food that I can bless now, and you can come up and help yourself. And of course, if you're a little bit too shy to ask a question, you can come and have a chat with Chanel too, of course. Whakamangi nei kai hei oranga mo mātou tēnā whangahoki o mātou wairo. Te taro te ora ko iku karai te kai whaka ora ake. Ake ake. Amini.
Amini.